Have you ever wondered why toxic people seem to keep showing up in your life, no matter how hard you try to avoid them? The truth isn't just about bad luck or poor choices. It goes much deeper. It's about a hidden part of yourself known as the shadow self. Today we're diving into powerful psychology to understand why your shadow attracts toxicity, what it reveals about you, and how you can break free from this cycle once and for all. What is the shadow self? A psychological introduction. The shadow self is one of the most profound, yet often misunderstood concepts in psychology, first articulated by Carl Jung. It represents the parts of ourselves that we reject, suppress, or deny. The traits, impulses, desires, and fears that don't fit with the image we want to show the world, or even admit to ourselves. These hidden parts of our psyche aren't evil or bad, but simply aspects we haven't fully integrated. We push them into the unconscious because they cause discomfort or shame. Yet the shadow is very much alive beneath the surface, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in subtle and sometimes destructive ways. The shadow can contain feelings like anger, jealousy, selfishness, or vulnerability, things we were taught to hide or consider unacceptable. It also holds unresolved pain, trauma, or memories that we refuse to confront. When ignored, the shadow builds internal pressure, often erupting through emotional outbursts, unhealthy habits, or toxic relationships. The more we deny it, the stronger it becomes, because it's essentially screaming for recognition and healing. Understanding the shadow is about reclaiming these lost or hidden parts of ourselves. It's not about becoming perfect or fixing yourself, but about embracing your whole self, including the uncomfortable and messy parts, with compassion and awareness. Only by shining light on the shadow can we stop being unconsciously driven by it and begin to make conscious choices that lead to freedom, wholeness, and genuine connection. How the shadow influences your relationships. Our relationships act as mirrors, reflecting the parts of ourselves that remain unconscious or unresolved, especially those buried in our shadow. The shadow influences the way we perceive and respond to others, often in ways we don't consciously realize. Because the shadow holds traits and feelings we deny in ourselves, we tend to project these qualities onto others, seeing in them the very things we reject within. This projection can distort reality and create dysfunctional relationship patterns. For example, if you deny your own anger or vulnerability, you may be hypercritical or fearful of others expressing these emotions, unconsciously attracting people who trigger or embody those suppressed feelings. These dynamics perpetuate cycles of conflict, misunderstanding, or emotional pain. Additionally, the shadow influences what you attract because like attracts like. On a subconscious level, you gravitate toward people who resonate with your internal emotional landscape, even if those patterns are toxic. This is why some people repeatedly find themselves in harmful relationships or friendships that drain them. To break free from these patterns, you first need to recognize how your shadow operates in your relationships. This requires honest self-reflection and willingness to accept your darker or uncomfortable parts. Then you integrate your shadow. You stop projecting it onto others, which dramatically changes the quality of your connections. You start attracting people who reflect your healed, authentic self rather than your unhealed wounds. Why you attract toxic people that reflect your shadow. The toxic people who keep showing up in your life aren't random or simply bad luck. They are unconscious reflections of your shadow. When parts of yourself remain hidden or unacknowledged, you send out energetic signals that resonate with others carrying similar unresolved wounds. These toxic relationships act like mirrors, forcing you to confront what you've been avoiding inside. Attraction to toxic people often stems from familiar patterns established in childhood, where unhealthy dynamics may have been the norm. Your shadow contains these early wounds and limiting beliefs about yourself and others, shaping what you unconsciously seek or tolerate in adulthood. You may attract people who are controlling, manipulative, or emotionally unavailable because these traits mirror parts of your shadow, such as fear of abandonment, low self-esteem, or suppressed anger. Though painful, these toxic relationships serve a purpose. They expose the parts of you that need healing. Without this reflection, your shadow remains in darkness, controlling your life behind the scenes. The challenge is to see these relationships not as curses, but as invitations to deepen self-awareness and self-love. Breaking this cycle requires courage to face your shadow honestly. Only by owning your pain, fears, and shadow traits can you stop attracting toxicity and begin to magnetize healthier, more supportive relationships aligned with your true self. The role of unhealed wounds and denied parts of yourself. Unhealed emotional wounds, especially from childhood, form the core of your shadow. These wounds arise from experiences where your needs for safety, love, and acceptance were unmet or denied. As a survival mechanism, your psyche buries these painful parts deep in the unconscious to protect you from overwhelming hurt. However, denying these wounds doesn't make them disappear. Instead, they shape your beliefs about yourself and the world in ways you may not consciously realize. For example, if you experienced neglect or emotional invalidation growing up, you might carry deep-seated feelings of unworthiness or fear of rejection. These denied parts become activated in adult relationships, often triggering disproportionate emotional reactions or unhealthy attachments. Your shadow uses these wounds to keep you stuck in patterns that reenact the original pain, seeking closure or validation. The difficulty is that these parts feel dangerous to face because they carry vulnerability, shame, or grief. This fear leads to avoidance and suppression, which only intensifies their grip on your life. You might find yourself overreacting, shutting down, or attracting relationships that mirror these early wounds as a form of unconscious repetition. Healing starts by gently bringing awareness to these denied parts with compassion. Through therapy, self-reflection, or somatic practices, you can gradually unearth and soothe these wounds. The process of acknowledging and integrating these shadow aspects dissolves their power over you, freeing you from destructive patterns and opening space for self-acceptance and authentic connection. How fear and low self-worth feed the cycle. Fear and low self-worth are often the silent architects behind the cycle of attracting toxic people. Fear, especially the fear of abandonment, rejection, or being alone, pushes you into relationships that feel familiar or safe, even if they are harmful. When you don't believe you deserve respect, kindness, or love, you lower your boundaries and tolerate toxicity as a trade-off for connection. Low self-worth whispers lies that keep you stuck. I'm not enough. I don't deserve better. Or this is just how relationships are. These beliefs erode your emotional sovereignty, making you vulnerable to manipulation, control, or neglect. The shadow self harbors these fears and insecurities, using them to maintain the status quo because change feels too risky. Because of this, you might ignore red flags, rationalize toxic behavior, or stay silent about your needs. This reinforces the shadow's control, perpetuating cycles of pain and confusion. It becomes easier to blame others than face your own inner fears. Breaking this requires developing radical self-compassion and courage. Recognize that your fears are valid, but don't have to control you. Start affirming your worth through small acts of self-care, boundary setting, and honest reflection. Over time, this builds emotional strength and rewires your internal narrative from not enough to empowered self-love. Breaking the toxic attraction cycle. The power of shadow integration for breaking toxic patterns. Shadow integration is the transformative process of acknowledging and embracing the hidden, denied parts of yourself, the shadow, instead of pushing them away. This integration is crucial to breaking toxic relational patterns because the shadow's unconscious influence is what drives repetition and projection. By bringing shadow traits into conscious awareness, you stop externalizing your inner conflicts onto others. You begin to recognize your triggers as reflections of your unhealed wounds, giving you power to respond rather than react. You'll attract people who reflect your healed, authentic self, those who support growth, kindness, and mutual respect. The cycle of toxicity breaks, replaced by connections rooted in truth and emotional freedom. Remember, this work is ongoing. Celebrate small victories and be gentle with setbacks. Your willingness to face your shadow is the most courageous step toward reclaiming your power and living fully. Attracting toxic people isn't a punishment or a coincidence. It's an invitation to confront the shadow parts of yourself that have been hidden or ignored. When you face your shadow with courage and compassion, you reclaim your power, heal old wounds, and create space for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share your insights in the comments. Remember, your growth starts within, and that's where true transformation begins.